I think where I would focus with this question, whether politically or in business, is with the leadership team. So I said already in my talk, leaders set the norms, they design the structures, they design the incentives, the goals, and the strategy. So very often, putting effort into evaluating those leaders is going to be far more effective than thinking about the organization as a whole. So one very simple thing I think to think about is not just whether your leader or the division has hit its financial goals, but to also evaluate how it hit those goals. So to provide some sort of ethical analysis in your incentives and your reward systems, that can get overcomplicated, but very, very simply to get feedback from people about whether the leader says one thing and does another will speak volumes. I think a second thing to do is to really take seriously designing a culture where people feel psychologically safe to raise concerns. And I think many ethics and compliance efforts, though well-intentioned, go wrong by signaling zero tolerance, which does not allow space for debate and discussion of those gray areas. So what I think we need to do is to have a better conversation about what the real challenges are inside the organization, and that will make it easier to identify and address the real challenges. So it's a wonderful question. When I'm teaching, I hear this word authentic over and over again. And I hear this idea of ethics being performative, ethics just being value statements on the wall, ethics being something that's sort of empty PR and isn't met by actions in the culture. So I think the first thing I would say is to empower young people to do research and do investigations about what it is really like to work there. I think the second thing is to encourage people, young people, to ask questions and raise concerns and to have their voices seen and heard. I think the third thing, because young people have grown up in this era where they don't trust government and they maybe expect too much of business, is for the business to get very, very clear about what it takes to be successful in that company. Because I think the big problem with that discussion around authenticity and hypocrisy is a feeling that the company is saying one thing and doing another. So it's best to have maybe narrower and clearer expectations and be consistent about those expectations than to make all sorts of promises you're not going to be able to fulfill. And then finally, I think young people have grown up in this environment where they may be expecting their employer to solve all their problems. I teach in a very international classroom, and an example of something I would hear is, I can't do anything about climate change. I could recycle, I could take a shorter shower, or I could get a job and I could pressure the company to do something about this issue. So they increasingly see the company as a vehicle for their ambitions. And I think helping them to be realistic about that, helping them to understand that the company still needs to make money and to make a profit, helping them to understand what is required of them professionally, and then encouraging them to get involved in civil society, to get involved in politics, to do things outside work that will help change the world, rather than relying on their job or their employer to solve every problem out there, is all helpful. I have been completely honored to join the MI conference with the thought behind the agenda. I think you very often see at these kind of conferences the same topics over and over again. And I think the breadth and the depth and the thought that has been put into this conference is inspiring and made it just a privilege and an honor to be able to speak today.